Hej och välkomna till Aktiedagen tillsammans med Aktiespararna här i Stockholm. Mitt namn är Jennifer Claesson och jag kommer vara moderator under kvällen. Och ni som är med oss och kollar där hemma får jättegärna ställa frågor till våra bolagsrepresentanter under kvällen. Och det gör ni genom att antingen skriva i livechatten eller smsa in din fråga. Och nu har det blivit dags för oss att välkomna på engelska in English, Bawat Water Technologies with CEO Marcus Hammer. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Jennifer. And thanks to all of you in the audience, and thanks to everybody listening at home and following this. I'm doing it at English tonight. My name is Marcus Hammer, and although I'm from Copenhagen in Denmark, I'm quite sure you will appreciate my English better than my Swedish. So thank you very much for coming. We have 20 minutes, and during those 20 minutes, I hope that you will leave tonight with an understanding of what Bawat Water Technologies, what kind of company it is, what kind of technology we have, and what kind of market we operate in. Because we are just about to IPO here in Stockholm on First North as a premier company. The listing period is actually already running and is ending on the 17th of March. But very short, Bawat is a green tech engineering company dedicated to protect the marine environment. We have what we think is a very green, very environmentally, very reliable, sustainable technology, and we operate in a very big global regulated market. And that's why it's an interesting company to be in. First of all, Bawat, it was an engineer who named the company, so it means ballast water treatment. It's very simple. And that is what we do. We treat ballast water. And what is ballast water and why is it a problem? Why does it need to be treated? Well, first of all, ballast water is what you use on ships in order to balance the ship correctly based on how much cargo you have on board the ship. So as an example, if you sail a ship with cargo from Sweden to, let's say, Japan, you offload the cargo, and in order to sail back to Sweden with the ship correctly in the water, with no cargo on, you now need to put ballast water in the tanks that you have on board. That ballast water, when you come back to Sweden and take new cargo on, you actually deballast or pump overboard. But you can imagine that that water is now coming from Japan and it's coming now to Sweden. In that water, you have what's called invasive species. So you have a lot of algae, you have a lot of plankton, a lot of bacteria that is not local to the waters here in Sweden. So in Sweden or in Denmark or across the world, we are having these invasive species that are giving problems both environmentally but also from a financial problem. The best known case is actually the Great Lakes in the US, where in the 80s a very aggressive growing mussel was introduced and it plugged up the cooling systems for all the power plants. So that was actually what triggered the whole discussion understanding of invasive species. Today, invasive species are regulated globally through what's called the IMO. So it's the International Maritime Organization. They have actually globally agreed, and all the countries have agreed to it, to battle these invasive species coming from ballast water. And the way it's done is that it has to be treated, the ballast water. So you're not allowed to discharge the ballast water anymore without having killed both the bacteria, the plankton, and the algae. And that creates a very large global market. Actually, it creates quite a few markets. There is all new ships coming into the market every year. That means all new build ships have to live up to these criteria. But there is also a substantial, very large market right now with all the existing ships in the world. The world merchant fleet is somewhere around 75,000-80,000 ships. And they all have to live up to these discharge criteria between 2019 and the end of 2024. So there's a very large market now where ship owners are looking for equipment or solutions to treat this ballast water. And then what we have seen in recent years is there is also a market growing up onshore, where ship owners simply say, well, we don't want to have the hassle about treating the water on the ships. We simply want to discharge it to a reception facility in a port or in a harbor or in a dock or where they arrive. And all of these three markets is where Bawat operates. And we operate with a technology that we think is very superior. Not only us, but actually also our customers. Because we have developed a green solution to what we see as a green environmental problem. In the sense that we still need to treat the invasive species, but what we do is that we have looked at a ship and said, well, on a ship, we actually have a lot of surplus heat. Normally, we have surplus heat when we operate the ship because the engine is generating heat that needs to be cooled down from the cooling water. The heat in that cooling water we can actually use to heat treat the ballast water. We do it through heat exchangers, pumps, and a normal setup on a ship. So we actually heat the ballast water, kill all the invasive species, and then we take the warm ballast water and cool it down again when we bring in the new ballast water. So we continuously reuse the heat on board the ships to kill the invasive species. That means that the ship now have a solution that simply has a better performance relative to competition. First of all, our system, because heat works everywhere in the world. So whether you are in salt water or in brackish water or you are in fresh water, whether you are in a murky river or in a dirty delta, our system works everywhere. And once it's installed, because you get the energy for free on board the ship, the total cost of energy to operate these systems gives a significant advantage to the owner. Especially now, when you see the rise of oil prices. We heard Thesis Oil, speaking earlier about the rise in oil prices. That also give rise to, an increased cost to run alternative systems. An alternative system actually operates, by and large, either with mechanical filtration and heavily energy doses from light, or with chemicals. Our system is sustainable, it's completely chemical-free, and it reuses the heat that otherwise would have been wasted on board the ship. Another great advantage of our system is that it's composed of completely standardized marine equipment. So that means that we are not a manufacturing company. We buy all the pieces from sub-suppliers, and there are many of them, and then we put them together in an engineered solution for our customers. That also means that the money we are raising now on the IPO is by and large only used to actually promote sales and get our name known in the market. So we are not tying up money in manufacturing facilities or stock or buildings. We are by and large only using it to build up knowledge about our equipment and solution by investing into sales. We have patented our technology. You cannot patent heat or pasteurization, which is basically is, but we have patented the application that it means to take heat and use it to treat ballast water. So we have a very good protection on our technology into this market. This slide here is a little bit of a bragging slide. I'm just going to go quickly through it because it basically shows that heat works. So on the left, in order to get an approval to sell your equipment to the ships, there is 6 different tests we had to do on board ships, different places in the world. and it shows how much, let's say, algae or plankton that was in the water that we tested. And on the right, in the red box, you can see how much was left after it has been through our system. And on the left, you have hundreds of thousands, and on the right, you have only zeros. So it basically means that heat works. And we have known that for years, since actually Pasteur invented the pasteurization and heat treatment for bacteria. This also means that the company we are today is a scale-up company. We have a technology. We have already built a long and good reference list with many different ship types, many different ship owners. So our equipment is already out in the world, operating in many different segments of the shipping industry. And this is why we are now today, as I said, going on the IPO. We are raising capital to tie in to these markets, both the new building of the ships, but also the existing fleets of the ships. That is a very large pool, and right now a very attractive market to be in. But what is also attractive to us is what I mentioned in the beginning, that there is a market growing up for onshore treatment. And it might sound a little counterintuitive. Why are we treating ballast water from ships onshore? Well, it's because there's actually quite a few ships that has operating patterns where it simply makes more sense for them simply to pump the water off to a reception facility or receiving treated water before they start on their voyage, because then they can actually discharge without treating when they come to their furthest destination. And our technology, because of this heat treatment, is actually very suited to service this market. So what we have done is that we have taken our technology and we put it into a container, a mobile box basically, and we have taken a mobile heat source and put it in. That means that we now have a small mobile ballast water treatment facility. And that facility we can use for two things. We can either sell it as it is to customers, and we are doing that, and then they operate it themselves. Then they can operate them for a fleet of small ships if they have that, or barges, or based on what type of operating patterns that they have. They can now use a system for more ships, which gives good financial idea for these customers. But there is also a very large opportunity that we are tapping into, and that is selling this as a service. And especially in the US, where we are focusing our effort right now, this is very interesting. The US is, first of all, a very large market, but it's also a very heavily regulated market. There we have, together with partners, we have set up a service company in the US. So we are bringing in the hardware, the technology to treat the water. And then we have found operational partners in the US that, for one, they know the regulation, but secondly, they have a very large operational setup to service the ship. So we are right now focusing on the Gulf of Mexico, the Mississippi Delta, and the Houston Ship Canal. The challenge here is that a lot of ships on a regular basis are coming in and out through salty water from the Gulf of Mexico into brackish or fresh water in the Mississippi or Houston. And there is simply no other system than ours that can handle that change in water quality. And the Americans, they love service. They hate to invest in hardware. So they think it's fantastic that we are setting up the service in onshore, and then they are basically buying it from us. So instead of selling the equipment to the customer, we are now selling a per cubic meter treated water. So ships would come in and say, we have 2,000 cubic meters of ballast water that we need to discharge. Can we take it through your facility? And we say yes, and then we charge them X amount of dollars per cubic meter. That's a very nice recurring offer for service to our customers. We make money twice because we first sell our equipment to our joint venture service company in the US, and then we take the cash flow on the way back from when we sell the service. Bawat is not just only me. Bawat is a Danish company founded and rooted very heavily in what we call the blue Denmark, which is basically the shipping and the shipping industry related Denmark. So myself, I have a background as an engineer and a finance degree. I got my hands dirty in the oil industry, but has always been in, let's say, process engineering and this type of business model that we do today. I work with a very seasoned CFO, John, who has a background as an accountant, but has always been part of working with the engineering company. And then we have a very, very professional board, chaired by Klaus Nyborg. I think in Sweden you might know DFDS, which is a big transportation company where he's vice chairman today. He's also chairman of a large Danish shipping company called Norden. We also have other, for example, Thomas Knudsen, who is the former CEO of MAN B&V, who is the company who manufactures the big engines to ships, and Peter and Charlotte, who basically have backgrounds that forms a very, very capable board that gives us good sparring in the journey that we are about to take. So, summing it up, we are, by fact, the only green solution to a global green challenge and a green environmental problem that invasive species from ballast water is. We have a very superior technology. It's very simple. Once it's installed, its total cost of ownership is almost zero for the operators once they have it on board. There's no chemistry, and it works across the globe. We have a mobile solution as the only one in the market that opens up a very large service market. We are focusing on the US. We will have our first equipment installed in the US in full scale end of the year. We already have a smaller version of our technology in New Orleans operating right now, getting the Americans to know the service and selling the service as we speak. We have the right team in place and we are ready for scale up, and that's why we are listing right now in order to make sure that we can build the organization from a sales perspective and getting our name known across the globe. We have a growing order book. We have given guidance in our prospectus. So we did in Swedish krona, we had a turnover of 10 million Swedish krona, a little bit more last year, and we are giving guidance and saying that we will do at least 50 million Swedish krona turnover this year. We will come back after the summer, once we've been listed, with a full and further guidance for the full year. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Marcus, for the interesting presentation.
Thank you very much.
And congratulations on the upcoming listing.
Thank you.
And I must ask, as a Danish company, why did you choose Stockholm Nasdaq?
Well, we are choosing Stockholm because we think in two reasons. There's just better liquidity in the Swedish market. There's a bigger tradition for shares and this type of shares in the Swedish market. And then we actually have quite a few competitors in Sweden. So, the understanding of ballast water and why it needs to be treated and technology behind that is actually present in Sweden today. So that's why we are doing it. But we are doing it as basically as a pan-Scandinavian listing. We are listing here in Stockholm, but we are passporting our prospectus both to Denmark, Sweden and Finland. So we are marketing it everywhere.
Okay. And you said that the money from the offering will be used for promoting sales. How will you go about with this? Can you give us an insight in how the sales process looks like?
Yes. The sales process for somebody like us is that it's quite typically that that we have a local sales organization in Denmark, and then we have agents sitting around in the world promoting our technology in the local markets. So that is where we are investing. So we are investing more with our agents around the world, and also investing a little bit locally in Denmark to grow up our own sales organization. To a smaller extent, we are also investing in our back office engineering. We need some engineers and some project managers to execute more of the projects that we are already doing now, but that's only to a smaller extent. The main focus for the money that we are raising is to bring this company towards break-even and making sure that we can grow the sales so more people, more companies around the world know our technology and who we are.
And from your presentation, I understood that Bawat is the only company that offers a fully mobile, containerized solution that can treat ballast water onshore. Is that correct?
Absolutely. And it's not because the competitors do not also see this market. They absolutely do. But all other technology is actually what's called a two-pass technology. Their ballast water has to be treated both on the way into the ship and on the way out of the ship. But because we use heat treatment as the only source, we can treat either on the way in or on the way out. And that's why we can make a mobile land-based solution. So we can actually receive the water from the ship, treat it, and then discharge it into the port. Or we can reverse it, and we can actually take water from the port through our system and deliver it to the ship, so they actually leave the port with treated water and do not have to treat it afterwards. And that is the uniqueness about our technology. So not only is it green on the ship, but having this one-pass technology gives us an opportunity to be very much first mover and single mover on the whole service market.
And is it possible to compare the demand for onshore versus offshore treatment?
That's a very good question. There is, of course, a quite well-defined market right now for ships installation based on the amount of new ships coming in and the amount of ships that exist today. But we're also seeing, and that's not me, that's international studies showing that quite a lot of that technology that it's out there already is actually not working very well. So there's more and more compliance coming from regulators where they're going in. Not only do they check that equipment is installed, but they're also checking the discharge from the ship if they live up to the regulation. So quite a few of those ships stand now in a dilemma. Should they reinvest into technology that works, or should they buy the service onshore? So I think we will see both. We will see a growing and continuing onshore business. But right now there's a lot of focus on the ship's installation.
And now I see we have some questions from the audience at home.
Okay.
I'm going to start with the first one. What are your biggest challenges going forward?
Well, the challenge is always for a small company to act globally. How do you do that in the best professional manner? And we do that by having these agents that works on our behalf in order not to have subsidiaries that are costly around the world. So we make sure that our agents are, well paid, so they think it's interesting to promote and sell our equipment. But even though it's a global market, I would also say that the shipping market is relatively tight. So word of mouth is actually spreading. So once you do a good installation and stick with your customer and they see that it works, then word of mouth is actually quite fast to go out there. So,
and that's what you're hoping for when entering the US?
Well, it's we're not planning on hope, but
No.
we know that this is also how we are actually getting out to our customers.
Yeah,
absolutely, and we can see, and this is why we are so, I would say, quite gung-ho on a very rapid ramp up, is because we have spent the last year and a half since we got our approvals to actually operate as a company to get all of these installations in with our customers. And our customers typically work by saying, we'll buy your equipment for one ship. Once we see that it works, you get the rest of the fleet. And that's why we can now see that, for customers, we got the first ship, now we get, the 5 next from that fleet. So from a selling point of view, it becomes much easier, and that's why we can see this ramp up as we are predicting right now, because we are into that next phase where we've done our references, we have our first operating with the customers, now they're coming back. So we'll do more of that and more of getting more first customers in.
That sounds good. And we have another question from the audience. Who is the client regarding new build ship owner or shipyard?
Well, the client is can be different. It can be actually the ship owner itself who wants to have a Bawat equipment on board. So when he buys a new ship from a yard, he tells the yard, I would like to have a Bawat equipment on board because I know that works and I have it on my other ships. But it can also be the yard itself that is giving its recommendations to our system. Some owners go to the yard and say, I like this ship, but I don't know anything about ballast water. What can you recommend? So it can be both the owner, but it can also be the yard. It can also, sometimes the yard is actually a competitor because some yards have their own system because they just want to push a standard system. So it's a variety of opportunities and competition as well.
And one last question to sum it all up. What would you like to say to potential investors watching now or hearing you?
Well, I think the Bawat share, first of all, I hope my enthusiasm about the company and the technology has come through here tonight. I think we have a fantastic company with a lot of possible triggers for the share price as we look into the next 3, 6, 12, 24 months. There's so many things. Once we, simply the growth that we will show will be a trigger in itself. The whole, startup of service in the US will be a phenomenal trigger. Once we've done that 2, 3, 4 times, this company people will say, you're too big to be here. So the opportunity in this market here are enormous. And we stand alone with a very unique technology and a very unique approach to how to do it. And in a green tech company like ours, I think that's interesting. And maybe a last comment to that, we operate in a complete regulated market, which is interesting in the world we are in today with war. I mean, our market doesn't disappear because of a war in Ukraine, even how bad it is. A regulated market stays here. So having a green tech company in a regulated market where you can get growth, I think is quite unique for a new company. And that is why I think it's very interesting to be an owner and a shareholder.
Thank you very much, Marcus and Bawat.
Thank you very much for having us.
Vi är alldeles strax tillbaka. Nu ska vi ta en